I want to thank you for joining us today for lucky number 13 episode of Restaurant Dealmaker Show. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, the Restaurant Dealmaker Show features a prominent person related to the food service industry, either a former client, an RRC agent or broker, or other accomplished person related to the food and beverage industry. This month, we are privileged to feature Pat Ottone, a former seller client, and Keith Simpson, RRC's top agent, who worked with Pat in selling his 5 restaurants within the past 2 years. Pat's restaurants include a Lalla Grill in San Jose, 3 restaurants in Monterey, including Lallapalooza, Lalla Grill, and Lalla Oceanside, and Leased in Salinas. Pat it belongs to a small group of distinguished retired restaurateurs that sold their profitable business to live their life of their dreams and enjoy their future years with friends and family. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of restaurateurs that I can say fall into this category. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box, and when we can, we will try to respond to them during the show. I think I'll begin by asking Keith, who basically is responsible for this marriage, to start off by telling us briefly about himself. Keith was he was our first kickoff Restaurant Dealmaker co-host in January 2022. And also, in addition to talking about your background, sort of tell us how you met Pat and how this whole marriage began. Thank you.
My background in the restaurant industry goes back to 1973 when I went to catering college in London for 2 years. Came out, worked in a lot of restaurants and hotels, and eventually found my way in America in 1996, where I opened one restaurant in South Lake Tahoe, then another in Lake Tahoe, and then one in Roseville near Sacramento. From there, when I sold my first restaurant, I met Steve. And I joined Restaurant Realty Company, I think in 2012, 11 years ago.
Right.
And since then, sold about 250 restaurants. And I was selling 2 big bakeries in Fresno. And one of them, Eddie's Bakery, the owner, was a friend of Pat's. His name, Mark Whitcliffe. And Mark, after I sold the restaurant, recommended me to Pat. And Pat at the time was only wanting to talk to me about selling one restaurant, Lalla Grill in San Jose. And I met Pat on the day his general manager had a day off, and I'm following him around the restaurant, and he's trying to open it with his staff, and we were trying to get his signature. Okay, I'll go to the kitchen, I'll go here, I'll go there, and it was enlightening. And we met Pat. From there, we sold that restaurant in June of 20. That was the beginning of COVID. We sold that. And Pat came over with his wife, Ellen, over to Arizona, where I reside. And we met for dinner. And he was just hinting, well, maybe I want to sell some or all of the others. And his wife, Ellen, was saying, yes, 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 please. And I flew over to Monterey, a few weeks later. And Pat kindly picked me up from the airport. He drove me around all the restaurants. We had lunch in Lalla Grill and basically said, where do I sign? Let's go. And we sort of knocked them one by one. I think 2021, we sold Leased and Lallapalooza. And then in 22, we sold, right in January 22, right at the beginning, we sold the Lalla Oceanside and Lalla Grill. And we've remained colleagues ever since. So that's the story of myself and Pat and I.
Thank you. And Pat, can you tell the audience to sort of give us a summary of your background and how we were fortunate enough to meet you?
Well, great. I got to say right off the bat that Keith made it easier to sell the restaurants, because it's quite emotional to sell something that you had been working hard for 37 years. So I actually started in 1985. I was in a family business. Our family kind of were big hard workers. My dad taught me that. I hung around my dad's manufacturing plant. So in 85, I wanted to strike out on my own, and I bought a little franchise called the Velvet Creamery. I was the first franchisee in Monterey. And then I really struggled in that concept, and I opened up 4 restaurants under this franchise, but it was all not doing well. But it taught me the restaurant business, as I had never worked in a restaurant before in my life. And so it was just a rude awakening to all of a sudden be in the restaurant business. So that franchise was a good and bad experience. And then in 91, my friend Mark Whitcliffe, who Keith had introduced me to, or he had introduced me to Keith, we both disenfranchised, and that's how we became really good friends. And I feel like in 1991, that's where I really started my restaurant business. I put in a kitchen and really started to hone my abilities as a restaurateur. I had to all of a sudden start making food and recipes and managing people. And then it started to really take off, and I started to do really well in this first restaurant. So then in 1997, I opened up Lallapalooza with a big bar in the middle of it. And it was kind of a unique bar setting with martinis. And it was kind of like a huge hit in Monterey. And the bar was just overwhelming the restaurant. There was like on Friday nights, 4 or 5 people deep at the bar.
Oh.
So I really learned the bar business, and that really taught me the bar business. So that was a big learning experience. And then I opened up the restaurant in Salinas in 2001, which is Ellie's, which was breakfast, lunch, and dinner family restaurant. And I had a big lounge too with a bar. So it was a big monster to run, tough restaurant to run. So, and then I opened up Lalla Grill in the back of the mall in 2008. And then I opened Lalla Oceanside Grill right on the water, overlooking the water at Cannery Row in Monterey. Just a stunning view,
That's a great location.
just something that really made me proud, something I couldn't pass up. So I opened that in 2015, and then 2018, I opened up a Lalla Grill in San Jose. So that was my peak, 5 restaurants. So.
Wow. So after being in the business for so many years, what do you miss the most about the business right now?
Well, a couple things. I think by far the camaraderie. There is a closeness and a teamwork in restaurants you cannot get in any other business. You get feelings working so closely with people, and when you go through a rush and you make it through, it's almost like scoring a touchdown in a football game. There's just a feeling you get with other people that you can't really bring to any other business. So I miss that. That was my social life. I went into restaurants for 32 years, and it was like my family, my friends, who I hung out with. So big part of my social life was gone when I sold the restaurants. And I think the other thing that I enjoyed the most was recipes. I love thinking about recipes. I did all the food recipes. I did all the bar recipes. I was constantly changing menus. At one point I had 35 menus. Wow. And I would always have 5 or 6 on my desk, and I'd always be working on those menus, thinking about the next item. And you get great pleasure when a recipe works and people love that item and it's a big hit in the restaurant. It just gives you incredible feeling. So I think those are the 2 things I miss the most.
Got it. Okay.
And when I met Pat and we had lunch at Lalla Grill, which is an amazing restaurant. It's stunning. It's modern, beautiful patio outside. We've chosen our food. And then he said, yeah, but I'm going to tweak this one. And that's what he's talking about the menus. He's always trying to tweak a dish that's already on the menu. And then the cocktail menu, he talks about this. But when we walked into Lalla Oceanside, every table gets a view of the otters. Let me tell you, you're looking at the Bay of Monterey. It was stunning, just amazing, with a banqueting room downstairs. So it was just great. So now, Pat, I've, having sold your last 2 remaining restaurants a year ago, any regrets?
If there was a perfect world and I could make everything happen at will. I think I would have liked to have held on to the 2 restaurants one more year. They were doing so well after COVID. They were so busy and I was making more money than I'd ever made. I think if I could have done it one more year, but I always had that fear that if I don't sell them, what happens if the economy crashes and I can't sell them? I just got to that point of the disappointment of the San Jose restaurant, and then the disappointment of being closed with COVID, and that whole emotional impact. I was just afraid that I don't know if I can last 10 more years. I know I could last 2 or 3 more years, but I just had that fear that take it while it could happen. It's just so. I think it was good. I think it was the right time, but you always have little regrets.
Sure.
Okay.
So, Pat, how did you find working with Keith as an experienced restaurant broker and former restaurant owner helpful in getting the job done?
Well, I think my greatest compliment would be that I think we're friends now. I mean,
Absolutely.
he did a great job, and I wanted to run the restaurants. I didn't want to have to worry about all the different little details that it takes to sell a restaurant, and I didn't have the ability to find potential buyers. I mean, so I wanted to turn it over to him, and he was the perfect person. He knew the restaurant business. He understood it. And then he was very organized and detailed and had contacts in banks and had contacts with buyers. And he just knew the playing field in California so well that I really feel like I got really taken care of. And there's no blowbacks on something was done wrong or something, no I's were dotted, or everything was taken care of perfectly. And I really relied on him if I was flipping out a little bit, because it's very emotional. It's emotional to sell your restaurants. If I could call up Keith and he could kind of bring me back down to earth and be real logical and, get me thinking straight again, because, you have this guilt feeling of the crew you're working with, that you're almost a traitor, that you're selling the restaurant. So I had to overcome that, and he was real helpful with that. And again, the details. Who wants to do the details? I think you're a fool if you try to sell the restaurants yourself. I mean, run your restaurants, make some money.
You've made me blush now. So now, you just to let you know, you were a terrible seller to work with. You were just unbelievable. You were up there and you're down here. And I had to bring you down. No, I'm joking. It was a pleasure working with you, because it was you had such a fabulous portfolio of restaurants, and they were all different. They were all a little bit different. Ellis was very different to Oceanside. That was more of a bakery, wasn't it, as well? You had a bakery there, if I remember.
Yeah, no, we had a whole bakery with, we were sheeting pastry, and it was a very complicated restaurant. I mean, we between breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what do we have? 75 things on the menu, plus we were making pastries and cookies and cakes and pies, and then we had a big bar lounge with like 14 TVs, and it was just a hard restaurant to run because there was just so much going on. There were just so many moving plates up in the air that were spinning at all times. So,
and these aren't little 1,200, 1,500 square foot restaurants. These are 5,000, 6,000 square foot restaurants. These are
right.
big
Yeah. And I mean, we were doing, well over $4 million, and, it's just breakfast, lunch, and dinner adds a complexity because you have to get 2 staffs. So it's almost like running 2 restaurants.
Yeah.
So be careful to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah. It's twice as difficult.
Yeah. Now I will add something to that. My family used to run a lot of our restaurants for 24 hours with union employees. So we had a lot of challenges, with 3 shifts and, the ups and downs of the business. It was, I'm grateful I'm not there doing that anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So Pat, what was your management style operating 5 restaurants? How did you cope with that, and what was your style?
That's a tough question. My style was work in the restaurants, work elbow to elbow, constantly interacting with the staff, be on top of everything. I really thought like it was really important to hire the right people and treat them the way they want to be treated, because your staff was everything. I think if I hope that people respected me, that they knew that I only had one agenda, and that was to make the restaurant busy and for them to make more money. I was so happy when the wait staff would pull off $300-400 in tips. I'd be like, that's great.
Yeah.
Now they want to work for me. They know it's busy. They know that they're going to make good money here. And so it just, you know, I just was just pulling for everybody, and I was pulling for the restaurant to do well. My whole personality was wrapped up into the restaurants. I mean, it was my life. And I think I told you guys that if somebody didn't like my restaurants, I felt like they didn't like me. That was me. Those restaurants were a reflection of me. And so that's how I ran it. I think everybody knew that I was 100% committed to my business and to my restaurants and to making their jobs as profitable as possible for them. So I had many employees that worked for me 20 plus years.
Now, how many employees did you have?
20 to 25 employees that worked for me 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many employees did you have total at your peak?
Well, I think at the peak, close to 300.
Wow.
Which is a lot and a little scary.
Sure. And realizing you had so many long-term employees and so many committed employees, including managers, how did they feel about you selling?
I think they were surprised. They were a little scared. I reassured them, though, that I'm only going to sell to somebody that I have confidence in. I'm not just going to sell to sell. And I truly believe that. I mean, somebody's worked for me for 27 years. I know their family. I know their wife. I'm not going to sell to somebody I think that's going to tear down the restaurant and do a horrible job. So I think, you know, and I think Keith played a part in that, which is a good thing, is that we found good people to take over the restaurants, and they're succeeding right now. And I'm most proud that like my restaurants that I invented are still wildly successful and getting big volume, and they got at least another 10 years in them, 15 years. So if you can create a restaurant that can last 30 years, I think that's something you can be really proud of.
For sure. Yeah.
And Pat, you know, it was interesting how the owners of the Lallas now, 3 of them, they were originally wanting to buy Ellis in Salinas.
I know.
And the landlord wouldn't let them because he wanted his brother, who owned a few Black Bear diners and things, to buy Ellis. And so we moved from like a sort of $1.5 million deal to an over, $3 million deal, and why don't you buy 3 restaurants instead of buying the one? And they did.
You know, that when that problem started to happen at Ellie's, where the landlord was acting to me not sensible, that was the first thought. Well, let's get them to buy Lalla Grill and Lalla Oceanside, because I thought they were good operators too. It was an uncle and a nephew that were buying it, and they had an incredibly successful Mexican to-go place, and they just knew what they were doing. So, you know, quite frankly, I think they're really happy that they got Lalla Grill and Lalla Oceanside. I think they're very happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it me again? No, it's you this time.
It's you again. We just talked
Really?
about. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is. Tell us the most embarrassing moment or the biggest mistake you ever made in the restaurant business as an owner, not as an employee.
Well, embarrassing. I used to be embarrassed when I had the Velvet Creamery franchise that we didn't have a stove, a griddle. We couldn't cook burgers, fries. It really like instilled in me. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was embarrassed that we couldn't do that, and that the restaurant next door could do that. So that really ingrained in me a huge competitive spirit that carried me through for a lot of years. But my biggest mistake, by a million shot was San Jose. I totally underestimated the clientele there in North San Jose, and the location, and the weekend traffic was horrible. Building in San Jose, the construction just went horrible and went like $800,000 over budget, So the whole thing was a disaster from the very beginning to the very end. The landlord was horrible to me and really stuck it to me. So the whole thing really went bad. So that was a horrible mistake. So if I had to give advice to people, you have to have the most important thing, and the 80% rule is you have to have the right concept in the right location. You can have the greatest concept in the world. You could be Wolfgang Puck. He's closed restaurants. He had bad locations. That is the most important decision you can ever make, is picking out the right location and putting in the right concept that fits that location.
Right.
Well said.
Thank you, Pat.
So Pat, what was the most satisfying time you've had in your restaurant career?
I was always on edge. I never felt comfortable. I never thought I had it made. I always was fighting for business. I was always trying to figure out an improvement. But I guess when I had 4 restaurants, the 3 in Monterey and the 1 in Salinas, and they were all pretty successful, I just didn't realize that I had it made. And that I didn't need to go to San Jose, that I could make plenty of money with 4. I didn't have to travel, 2 hours up and 2 hours back, fight traffic, just get exhausted and have to ignore my other restaurants because I had to be in San Jose. So I just didn't know how well I had it and how satisfied I could have been just with 4 restaurants. So, and if I would tell anybody advice is that going from 1 to 2 restaurants is really hard, but you can get up to like 3, 4, maybe 5, but you get into a position with 5 restaurants where you don't have the capital and the revenue to hire district managers, chefs, infrastructure in the office. Getting from 5 to 10 restaurants is probably the most difficult part of growing a chain. So, be careful when you make that decision of going from 3 to 5 and think you're going to go to 7 or 8, because it's been the downfall for a lot of restaurant people. You just don't have the money to support the infrastructure to grow and to support. You need the revenue of 10 to 20 restaurants to create that infrastructure.
That's great. How's the Spanish Inquisition going so far, Pat, from Steve and I? It's okay? It's all good?
Yeah, it's good.
All right. At your peak, you had 300 employees. You're doing around 14 million in revenues. How did you manage to control the costs of 5 restaurants?
So, in the restaurant business, your 2 biggest costs that you can control are your labor and your cost of goods sold. So I concentrated on both of those. So let's just take the labor. So we would go over the schedule and the labor twice a day. So lunch hour. So you would have to bring the people in at the right time and let them off at the right time. So you don't want to have too many people. You don't want to have too little people, because too little people raises your labor as much as having too many people, because they get overwhelmed, they get behind, takes them forever to get caught back up. It just stretches it out too much. But let me say one thing about your costs is the most important thing by a long shot is volume. Volume is everything in the restaurant business. The higher your volume, the more you can control your costs. If I have a busy day, my labor just works perfectly. It's fine. But if I have slow days, I have to really work hard to try to keep the labor down. So volume is your best friend. And I had a saying in the restaurant business: any decision that lowered volume was a dumb decision. So everything I tried to do was to keep the volume up. So really with your labor, you're kind of walking the fine line of giving good service so people come back and you can keep your volume up, yet you need to make a profit and you need to control your labor. So the only thing you can do is get people to do multiple jobs and also to stagger in and stagger off. So if your peak for lunch is at 12 o'clock, the third person walks in at 11:45 and picks up that section. And then at 1:30, when things slow down, you get that first person off that came in that day. So I was big on staggering in and staggering off. So that was how I would do a slow day. And as far as like food costs and liquor costs, I would have a weekly. I would check my food and liquor costs weekly. So I invented something called the magic number. So this was something that my office had to give me by Monday afternoon. And it was a report that had each restaurant, it would have the volume that they did that week compared to the volume they did to the year before. Then it would have the labor in dollars, and it would have the cost of goods sold in dollars and percent. And then I would subtract out volume minus labor dollars minus cost of good dollars, and it would give me a number. And so let's say I had 100,000 in sales, 30,000 in labor, 30,000 in what I bought cost of goods sold. That left me 40,000 for the week. So I knew by Monday at 4 o'clock that I had $40,000 towards my overhead. And I knew generally, say my overhead at Lalla Grill was $21,000 a week, generally. So that Monday, I knew that I made, $19,000, or I made $12,000, or I lost $5,000, and I can make adjustments quickly. So your costs, you got to know them. You got to know them quickly. You can't wait till 15 days after the end of the month and go, oh my gosh, I ran high labor. You're gonna have a horrible situation. So know your numbers, know them quickly, and react to them. So it's good to know your numbers, but if you don't react to them, we'd be like, oh, our labor was 2% over last week. We gotta redo the schedule. We got to figure this out. And the hardest part about the restaurant business is every week's different, especially in Monterey. We have tourists and not tourists, and we have good weeks and it's raining and less people come out. And so you're constantly in flux in the restaurant business, and you constantly have to be redoing your schedule and working on your labor.
That's amazing detail, Pat. I don't think many independent restaurateurs are as detailed as that to know your numbers. But going back to your revenue, that's exactly when I opened my first restaurant. All I concentrated on was the revenue. I didn't care about the cost. I said, let's just get the revenue up, get the great service, great food. We'll worry about the costs in year 2. Year 1 was just building up that revenue base. I mean, I used to work in the kitchens. I used to work for an owner that I would be cooking away, and he would just walk past me, and I didn't realize what had happened. But what had happened, he turned off all the gas burners because he thought he was saving gas. That's how he ran his restaurant. I'm going, oh my gosh, you're worrying about gas when, well, maybe now you worry about gas, but he was worried about the gas when he should be worrying about the quality and the revenue and the 2 big costs, as you just said, labor and cost of goods.
Yeah. But again, the 80% rule is volume. The other 10% is labor 10% and cost of goods sold 10%. So, I mean, if you have a $10 million restaurant, I guarantee you're going to have low labor. It'd be impossible not to have low labor. Right. So volume cures all ills.
Yes, wise words. Very well said. Right. So, Pat, of the 5 restaurants you had, what was your favorite one?
I've thought about that, and everybody would ask, what's your favorite restaurant? They're hoping I'd say the restaurant they're working in. They were like my kids. So I can honestly say I didn't have a favorite, but I can tell you the one that I was the most comfortable in was Lalla Grill in Monterey. It just was easy to park. It was easy to get there. I knew the staff really well. I just liked the concept. So it wasn't my favorite, but it was, to me, it was the easiest to hang out and it was the easiest to work at.
Okay.
Okay. Where do you see the restaurant industry going in the future in terms of style, food, service?
Well, it's getting harder and harder to find good help, especially cooks, harder and harder. So I think it's getting tougher and tougher. The costs are going up, rents are going up, labor in California is going crazy. It's just getting harder and harder for a full service restaurant. I think, you know, they're creating a atmosphere like Europe where you're going to have family restaurants or you're going to have big chains. And it's going to be tough, really tough to grow a full service restaurant from, you know, up to 10, like I was talking about. It's going to be really tough. You're going to have lots of money behind you. So, and I think, you know, the other trend is that people are being more sophisticated. I mean, with all these blogs and just all the talk about food and drink and wines and cocktails, I think you're just getting a more sophisticated audience. And so restaurateurs are going to have to rise to that challenge and give them a reason to come into the restaurants. And the one thing I think I'm more worried about than anything is the cost of what it costs a family to go out to dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy sometimes now. Two people go out to dinner and it's $75 if you have a glass of wine. And I'm just worried about what if it goes up to 100? Where's that point in the sand where people start going out to eat less? It's ingrained in American society to go out to eat and go out to dinner and to socialize in restaurants, but where's that line in the sand where it's going to be too costly? I don't know. That's what I would worry about the most.
Yeah.
You know, last week I was in LA and Denny's was the nearest place to get a breakfast. And for $20, I got bacon, egg, and a cup of coffee.
Wow.
$20.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That would have been $9 only a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. I used to like, oh, a burger's going to be $20. I go like, you know, I would say that in a jest, like, that's crazy. Who's going to pay for a $20 burger? And now it's typical $22, $23 at a restaurant to get a burger and fries with, you know,
How did you
bacon
love,
and cheese.
yeah, and how did you love those those couch quarterback critics on Yelp? You know, did you have many of those problems?
You know, I think I handled that poorly because my whole response to it was to ignore it, not look at it, because it would devastate me if somebody said, "Oh, the food sucked," oh. And I literally, it would like depress me. Like, I got to do a better job. How can I do better? So I had other people look at it, and then they would inform me if there was something I really needed to attend to, because I psychologically, I couldn't handle it. And you'd see 12 good ones, and then you would see one bad one. And people, like, they were overcritical of the wait staff. I gotta say, like, most of them couldn't wait on a table to save their lives, and
Right.
they would be very critical of the wait staff more than the food. And
Right. Yeah.
I just think they don't understand. They have 6 tables. There's a timing. They can't sit there and talk to you for 10 minutes. That they have 6 other tables and 7 steps at each table. That's 42 steps they have to be worrying about at any one time. So
A mentor of mine told me years ago, a critic is just a failed operator.
I know.
All they are.
Yeah. And I don't know, they're kind of mean-spirited sometimes too. Like, why are you so mean?
It's your competition.
Right, exactly.
It is.
So Pat, if Keith was to find you an amazing restaurant bar opportunity, would you consider going back into the industry?
Well, I'm not sure if I would or not, because I'd have to get excited about the opportunity. So it's hard for me to say right now. I'm not excited about any opportunities. You know, I did it for 37 years. Like, I don't want to be a grandpa with a walking stick running around a restaurant. I'm I'm fully happy with what I'm doing right now, but do I love competition and you know, the thought of creating something? Yeah, that interests me.
And
But-
you're doing that now. I mean, you're on a new plane of opportunity. What do you tell the group what your latest business venture is?
So I started a drink business, a canned drink business called Red Saint, and it's a 5% alcohol drink. It's unlike seltzers. It's nothing like anything out there. It's made with rooibos, which is only grown in the high mountains of southern Africa, and it's incredibly high in antioxidants, and it tastes really good, has a natural sweetness, so low calorie, no sugar, tastes good, gulpable, and actually, I like to say no consequences. I actually drink 2 a night. I just, if I had 2 glasses of wine every night, I would fill it the next day. And I have a big wine cellar, and I like wine. But I do more special occasions with wine now, and my Red Saint, I just love that I can have something refreshing, low alcohol, and not going to have any consequences the next day. So if you don't mind, I'd like to there's my can Red Saint, and it's crazy like the restaurant business. It's tough.
Where can people buy this product?
Yeah, Wine and More, and the other big chain is I don't know, I'm drawing a blank. The liquor store, the huge liquor store. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Bevmo?
Babmo, thank you very much.
Right.
You saved me again. Can I send you some money?
Right. Yeah, and the website for that is drinkredsaint.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drinkredsaint.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like something I'd be interested in checking out for sure.
No, again, it opens up opportunities to relax and drink something that, it's for busy people that are productive and have lots of things to do in their life, but they want to relax a little bit. So I think it's the perfect beverage for that.
Sounds good. I'll definitely try it. We got a couple of questions from the audience. One is, I've heard many unique things about the Monterey and Carmel area, and what makes that area so unique?
Well, it's incredibly beautiful. So it's a tourist spot. I mean, it's stunningly beautiful. The weather's so temperate. I mean, it's just in the summer, it's 65, 70. And lots of days in the winter, it's 65, 70. So you combine the beauty, the weather, the historical significance of Cannery Row, the wharf, and it's got like a small town feel to it. Carmel is this little quaint little town that's beautiful right on the ocean. You have Pebble Beach, which one is the most beautiful resorts in the world. So you have all that going for it. And so since it's a tourist area that has Pebble Beach and all these big resorts, there's the food, there's a high class, level of food in Monterey and Carmel. It attracts good chefs and attracts good workers, and the food industry is a big part of the health of Monterey County. And I've lived here my whole life. And, as a little kid, you always say you're going to move away, but I went to Chico College and I lived in Modesto for 6 months. Oh man, you can't beat Monterey County. Just the beauty, small town feel. Yeah, that has great restaurants, lots to do. The weather's beautiful. So the only thing about running a restaurant is that you do have some ups and downs. Say January's the slowest month. You have to prepare for that. And you get like really busy months, June, July, August, September. So you just get used to that rhythm.
Sure. Yeah,
Right.
That is gorgeous, Monterey and Carmel. We love going there for sure. Another question from the audience. I'm thinking about opening up a restaurant in the Monterey area, and I've heard that the labor market is particularly challenging there. How did you deal with the challenges of the labor market and incentivizing your employees?
Well, I think your relationship is by far the most important ingredient. Of course, you got to pay a comparable wage. They're not gonna work $3 an hour less for you. So you got to have a busy restaurant so you can pay those comparable wages. But it's the relationship more than anything. It's the relationship with the cooks and the staff that they feel good about working there. You ever worked in a place where you don't like the owner and the staff, there's no teamwork, people don't get along, there's a lot of complaining. I really worked hard to try to create an atmosphere in my restaurants that people wanted to work there. And I tried to attract the best people, because you are competing with the whole peninsula for the best people. People are going to go to the restaurants that have the most volume, mostly, because they make the most money. Plus, they like the owner, they like the manager, they like the atmosphere of the restaurant. People like to go work at places that they like to eat at also. If they like the food there, they feel comfortable there, working there. So it is a challenge. That is going to be one of the biggest challenges of the future, is staffing your restaurant, finding a good general manager, finding good cooks. Wait staff's a little easier. Bartenders are tough. But it's going to be a challenge, finding people. So that, you got to work hard, because if they're not going to work hard unless you're working hard. So you got to be in there setting the tone.
Absolutely.
When the restaurant opens up, and let them know you only have one agenda again, and that's to make the restaurant busy and for them to make money also.
Right. No, very, very good words of wisdom, spoken from two real pros, and I can identify that, being a former restaurant owner, and it's the things you said are so true. And you've got to be committed and set the pace and be the leader, and people respect you for basically working harder than anybody else. And so, very well said. If the audience wants to contact you, Pat, what's the best way to get you?
My email, it's my name, Pat Ottone, PATOTTONE @gmail.com. And I got to say, I'll be happy to give people my 2 cents, my advice. But ultimately, you have to make the decision. Do I know everything about the restaurant business? No. But have I been through all the wars? Yes. Do I have some philosophies that I think are real important? Yes. So I don't know, if I can help somebody, I'll be glad to. I'm not going to, work 50 hours for the person, but I'd be glad to answer emails and give them some advice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pat and Keith, someone wants to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, I'm Keith at restaurantrealty.com. That's KEITH at RESTAURANTREALTY.com. And I'm happy to help any buyer, seller, whatever I can do.
Can I say one last thing? If you're going to sell a restaurant in California, that's the man. That guy will get you the right price, and will handle everything, and he'll take care of the emotional baggage that goes with selling a restaurant. So my highest recommendation is Keith.
I owe you a dinner now.
Yeah. Okay. I expect it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On Thursday, April 20th, Restaurant Dealmaker show will feature our co-host Tucker Bill Main, who is a former seller client and nationally recognized restaurant management consultant, having served over 500 clients throughout the United States and Canada. Bill has more than 40 years of food service experience, hospitality and retail experience. He developed and owned 3 restaurants during his career, most notably the Shorebird restaurant, which is a Cape Cod style seafood restaurant on the Pacific Coast in Half Moon Bay. Bill is formerly the president of the California Restaurant Association and chairman of the California Restaurant Association Education Foundation. Bill's unique personality and outstanding restaurant experience will provide an excellent opportunity for all those that attend. And with that said, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you especially to Pat and Keith. and enjoy spring, which will hopefully be starting very soon. I'm sure we're sick and tired of this rain and wind and very challenging weather. And most importantly, stay well. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Our pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
gentlemen.
much.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.